Yeah, we should. Rachel's joining us. Excellent, that is everyone.
All right, the time is now 6 o'clock, and I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order on February 26, 2024. And have you noted the roll?
All present.
All present. Moving on to approval of the minutes for January 22nd, 2025. Do I have a motion to approve?
Don't move. Second.
And any discussion or changes? All those in favor?
Aye.
And do we have any appearances online or anywhere else that are for items not on the agenda?
Nobody online, and I'm not aware of any.
All right, moving on to number 5, unfinished business. Discussion action on updates to the city's emergency operations plans. And that's why Neil and the chief's here.
Excellent. I guess I'll just jump in. Thank you. Nice to see everybody. Glad everybody can make it. We have, again, in your, the same, I guess basically the same version that was distributed at the previous meeting is in your packet. We're waiting for the man of the hour to come help us out. Larry has provided us some comments. Chief, I did email you actually a list of kind of possible recommended changes based on Larry's comments. So I don't know if that's if you can share a screen so everybody can see it. I do have a hard copy for here, but I want to make sure the folks that online can see it as well. You know, if you guys just want to kind of grab these and maybe grab one. Larry's comments were all very good. Larry, you want to just grab one of those and send them around. So, you know, I don't know, Larry, if you want to provide a quick summary of your comments, or if you want me to go over them, or how would you like to address these?
I got. We got enough. I saw how you suggested where to put those in the plan. I guess I just wanted to share some of the experience that I had from working at Wisconsin Emergency Management, where I saw situations come up that really pose problems, especially for small jurisdictions where you don't have a lot of resources. You depend on people from outside agencies coming in. So I talked about MABUS, emergency police services and things like that. My wife is a retired nurse, and she was involved in disaster planning with Merritt Hospital. We wound up in a lot of meetings together over time. And she's really concerned about safety issues. And relating to the flooding that we had down on the islands, that whole area was really not secured. People could come and go. There was no apparent record keeping of who was there, who was working. Trucks are coming in delivering truckloads of sand. Kids were playing around in the area. Kids were playing in the sand piles. And those kinds of things can be a real disaster situation in a disaster. And in my notes, I noted an event that took place in Manitowoc County. They had a tornado. A lot of volunteers came out. They were registered with the county and the municipality, but one guy took his chainsaw to the taproot on the tree, threw it over the house, and he landed on his back. He wound up having, last time I talked to our attorney, $500,000 worth of medical bills. The state has a provision to cover those events if the people are signed in. And it limits the jurisdiction's capacity to $1 per capita. And this was in Manitowoc County at the time. Their county population was 51,000. That was the limit of the county's liability. So fortunately, this guy was signed in. They had security around the impacted area, and the state took most of that bill. And you know, there's no need for Monona or any other community to suffer those kinds of costs. I don't think that ever gets worked into our budget, something like that. So, you know, and about maybe 15 years ago, I did a tabletop exercise for the city here. and I did a tornado scenario that crossed the belt line, came up just this side of Winnequa Road and exited the city. So that's a lot bigger event than a flooding issue that we had. That's gonna entail need for a lot of mutual aid for law enforcement, fire, rescue, outside agency support. That's where the Salvation Army, Red Cross and organizations like that come in. We had a tornado in Adams County. They got just smacked with donations. I mean, things that were obviously broken got donated. And they filled up one barn at the county fairground with the stuff that was useless and another barn with stuff that people could use. Somebody's got to do all of that work, you know, and we're even smaller than Adams County. You know, and they were just stressed. Salvation Army came in, did a great job. They used emergency police services to secure the area. And I just wanted us to be aware of those kinds of outside issues and larger event issues that we might have to face. You know, and I don't doubt that our protective services here and the staff in the city and our public works people could do what they need to do, but you could get overwhelmed very quickly. And I hate to see us be in that situation. That's all on top of what each citizen would suffer if it's a tornado.
Can I add to that a little bit? I was.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, you
Dane-
were involved with EMS and go ahead.
Massive. Dane County Emergency Management, I did a lot of work on that plan. And I'm wondering how this molds into that one and when we call them and when they take over everything. You know, when you get into the reunification at hospitals and all of that reunification, it is just overwhelming. And we've done several practice runs on that, and it's still overwhelming. But all of that stuff, and when does this, our plan, go into their plan? And how does it mold with theirs?
Well, I mean, just the entire format of the document is taken directly from Dane County's
Good.
law.
Yeah.
Now, what we did do though, is we had several items of information that were in the former plan document that for one reason or another weren't in the new format. So we basically went section by section and kind of cherry picked the stuff we still thought was valuable and worked it into the new format. So we were very intentional about merging those documents in there, and Dane County Emergency Management is on. If you actually follow the flow of the actual emergency response, there's a 12-hour segments of when we notify them, how we update them. You know, we got the, I forget what the name of the form is that has the actual it's right here. The Uniform Disaster Situation Report that gets updated basically every 12 hours with new information. They are on the distribution list for that immediately. So as we update that and we get more information on that, so that communication really is in place almost right from the start. You know, I think certainly as we're first understanding the full expanse of whatever the disaster is, that's one of the calls that's gonna have to be made pretty early on. So I think it's a matter of, you know, we're responding, we're just probably getting a full understanding of what the nature of the emergency and the extent of the emergency is. It looks like it's isolated. We'll probably continue on at least for an extended, a little bit more time of us just responding, but the faster we get to a certain point where we realize we start getting that feeling of being overwhelmed, we're probably giving the other guys up at the county a little bit of a heads up and saying, yeah, we're gonna need you to mobilize and get in and we're gonna need some help.
Yeah, but I think they've changed their mindset over the years. So it's no longer a case of Dane County coming
In, no,
It's now what help you need and we'll provide that.
exactly.
But we will stay in command of everything. It's just, we'll give you whatever you need and we'll help you find whatever you need. And I will say our emergency management team at Dane County is pretty amazing. At scavenging and finding stuff when needed. So, our plan bleeds into theirs as once they're they'll start working through their plan on what help we need to mitigate the problem, but, I know we had a plane crash gotta be 20 years ago outside of Deerfield, and Dane County really did come in and take over, because it's just like, okay, Dane County Emergency Management came in and, they don't do that anymore. Now it's much more, cooperative and collaborative, I think.
Yeah.
When I worked for the state, we were told that chief elected official is the person that's in charge. And I always went to that person or their designee and said, how can the state help you? What do you need? And assist that way. Because people feel particular about their community, you know? Oh, and then they came in from the state and they didn't do this and they didn't know us, that, they didn't know this. Don't need that. You need a good, clean
Right,
relationship.
yeah.
We spent a lot of time focusing on these sort of divided tasks and coming together with Neil. But reunification planning is something that I and Jerry and the team, we've spent a lot of time with, but not just sort of the public safety arm of your government. The support, the other folks that will have a role in that as well. So our library director, our senior center director have, they will be persons in charge, and they have received training, and we're gonna conduct tabletops, and we've already done a semi sort of walkthrough in this room. Walking them through a scenario, and we've got equipment, and we've talked through sort of a little bit of feedback that we learned from Abundant Life, which, by the way, Abundant Life and being in Madison, the second largest city in the state, they relied on suburban assets and
absolutely.
resources, so.
Yep,
Yeah,
And then they came, they came, and that's the beauty of being in Dane County, because we have so many good partners and so many people that want to help. It's just now managing all of the help, which this plan helps decide.
Well, you see that with Mavis. Before Mavis. I don't know, anybody remember the butter fire?
yeah.
All right,
Well, I've heard. stories.
Madison goes, we got this. 24 hours later.
Help
Okay, you
on
sent
this.
a truck and a crew
Yeah,
and, you know,
Yeah.
and that was an epiphany for the city of Madison, because they thought they were the big dogs.
just get them, oh, yeah.
And they had all that melted butter. It was literally flowing down the street.
Fuel, oh, God.
Into the lake,
Huh?
into the river and the lake.
I heard
The older.
downhill.
So
Deals out there with buckets.
Save this stuff, that's right.
Feed it to the
That's
cow.
Wisconsin, we gotta support that.
That was before Mavis, and now you got the box
I
alarms.
think about that fire every time I go by that warehouse.
But one thing that's not included in the plan, the draft plan document is all of our mutual aid arrangements too, which will be in the final document, but I mean, that's gonna govern a whole lot of that as well. I mean, in terms of, you know, when people get notified, when they get mobilized, when they respond, I mean, so a lot of those agreements we're gonna rely pretty heavily on those, certainly the larger the event gets, for sure. But yeah, so just some of the notes, you know, we'll go through and Larry, jump in if I don't say something correctly on some of these. You know, we did add in terms of, you know, for securing the area, and we're gonna add language talking about, you know, securing the area for the duration of the emergency management event, and then transition to private security at some point, and that's a lesson that I learned in Sun Prairie with the downtown explosion, is we got everything all cleaned up, ready to go, we got the road cleared, got the road open. And PD's ready to stand down, and they're like, well, wait a minute, we got all this property what are you guys doing? Like, guys, we're done. The public safety aspect is done. Patrick got to experience that firsthand. So it was just, you know, so really kind of still making sure that something is in place. So if I think in that case, they got to with contracted security, I think, at some point to come in
Yeah, there was,
and
yeah.
take care of that. So, but at some point, the
I mean, that was
public
great.
needs to be done with that, yeah. And so it's making sure that the area is secure long enough to get everything that you need done, and the immediate response and the emergency aspect is done. Once the emergency aspect of it transitions from more of an emergency response to more of a cleanup and just a restoration kind of mode, that's PD's done at that point. Or so it was, nobody had thought about that, not a soul. So we had to really figure out what we needed to do, and it was something we wish we had planned for earlier on.
Did you guys in Sun Prairie get any financial assistance from the state on that?
You mean like a small business owners? Or
For security?
Or security?
Security
No,
or
yeah, I think so, yeah.
Nothing, no.
Yeah, they did come in and they did an emergency run to get the street repaired because it was Highway 19.
Yeah.
So that was their primary, state came in and did a lot of work on getting that done, but. So that's, we added that language, for the formal registration of volunteers, adding that to that section. There's already talks about managing volunteers and donations and things in general. We added specific language about the registration aspect that Larry referenced here. And we have a city form that kind of deals with city property that probably in a pinch we could use and kind of use that to register volunteers. But I think the other thing we probably want to do is probably check with Civic. I have a feeling they would have a form to, oh yeah, here's the one you want to use that the state wants to see, or maybe Dane County
Does the
Emergency
county
Management's
have
got one.
yeah.
They would be the other folks I would check on and say, use this form because this is exactly what, they're gonna need going on for it. So just attaching that forms, we've got one, we think there might be a better one available. We're gonna check into that before we adopt the final. I mentioned the Uniform Disaster Situation Report in terms of kind of using that. That's the format we need to do as we're kind of going through the response in the 12-hour increments, trying to evaluate the actual impacts of what's going on and the extent of that. So we might as well just attach that form right in the document. So people know that this is the information we're gonna be tracking. Here it is right here.
And if it's a big enough event, the information off of that form will get transferred to FEMA.
Exactly. So yes, and making sure we're using something in a format that they're gonna appreciate and understand and gonna fit into their system right away is kind of our goal there. Another thing we kind of learned, I think the hard way in Sun Prairie on that one that we did is for financial donations. God bless the local bank stepped up and said, hey, we'll establish an account, we'll do it. There's all kinds of tax implications and it's just kind of a mess. Eventually, God bless Renee Moe, about a week to 10 days came into United Way and said, hey, why don't you guys let us take care of that? We already got the 501c3, we're already set up to handle. So I think they would be our go-to partner that if we wanted to establish it someplace where people wanted to make financial donations, they are already set up to handle that. And they've done it for multiple disasters. Sun Prairie and since, I think they've actually been involved in that, so.
Bank of Sun Prairie won't do it.
Yeah, it caused all kinds of
I mean,
arguments.
there was attempts at fraud, there was.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some people that were from out of the area that were,
Tried to milk it.
yep.
Yeah, absolutely, So United Ways, they are pros at this, they've done this probably a dozen times now since that explosion in Sun Prairie, so I think just kind of calling them out and saying, hey, if we want to set up financial donations, they'll have a web link up in a matter of minutes and they'll set the address and the account and they're already set up to handle all the financial accounting of doing that. And they already have the way of doing the application process and evaluating a neutral evaluation that's enabled and not, based on the actual need and not on, never an objective review of those types of requests for assistance too. We didn't make an assumption that said assuming the EOC is here, which is kind of our default, right? And kind of going that, and I think we are in terms of where we would set up all our, the volunteer check-in and like the Red Cross and Salvation Armies, those folks is over at the library and use the municipal room in that first floor would kind of be our default. Obviously, if for some reason we're cut off from here, we would need to establish someplace else to do that. But I think as for most cases, that would be our default position for those to kind of help coordinate that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wasn't here at the last meeting, but was there any discussion on inventorying community assets or feeding people in an emergency?
That would be one of the things that under donations that would need to would kind of be coordinated and addressed. So that would fall under this section. And we, I think Chief mentioned, we've got kind of Diane and Ryan and we had 3 people that we set up to help with that. Get who our third one was.
So they're gonna delegate as well.
Yeah.
So we just wanna
absolutely.
manage who they manage,
A
so. they
lot of
just have-
times Red Cross and Goodwill will come in.
Yeah.
All you have to do is call them and they.
Yeah. And just again, kind of a lesson back in something, God bless Wisconsin. But we had so many people show up who absolutely had the absolute best intentions and wanted to help. And the amount of time and resources that were spent just trying to keep them out of the way and safe was just, it was like, guys, we appreciate it. Go sit over there. We'll tell you when we need you. But to at least have, a designated spot for them to sit and wait, to have a coordinator there who's taking the registrations, or asks like, hey, I need somebody to run these materials over to this spot. Boom, grab a volunteer, send them over to do that. So to at least get them physically organized and then get them, checked in and like I said on the list. I mean, they had more food and more stuff than they knew what to do with. So I appreciate Larry's part. This is the broken stuff. This is the good stuff. You gotta have somebody on there who's gonna be able to kind of redirect that stuff. And God bless them, they mean well, but that's not gonna help us. You guys just go put that over there. Thank you very much. We're not gonna argue with them on the spot, but kind of help set that up. They wanted to kind of move and make it a little bit more visibility on the public information checklist. I said, so that was attachment 7. We talked about like moving it up to maybe 3. So it's in there a little bit higher, a little more priority, Larry, in terms of what we looked at there. And then those were the adding of those agencies and resources under the contact under partners were specifically ones that Larry suggested. So
What is MABUS?
Mavis,
Mutual aid box alarms with our mutual aid system required, any of them.
those guys.
We're the fire department, we have to have fancy acronym.
Yeah,
I love
that's
that.
right.
much more than PD, right?
Yeah.
Well,
The
now,
police department has CAT bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love acronyms, so the Capital Area Police Mutual Aid Response.
Let's say cat bar, like a cat cafe.
That's how you wind up working football games.
Right.
there are benefits.
So those were based on Larry, comments that Larry provided. Larry also did some kind of forward thinking comments in terms of how to kind of, once we implement this. Just real quick, we do have a distribution plan for how we're gonna get copies of this out to folks who need to have it. There will be a public version, obviously it'll be available on the website. Each department head's gonna get a hard copy, they're gonna get a PDF. Probably on a flash drive as well, so they can have it portable, saved on the shared network, so obviously on each staff can access it here. The redacted version, which is in your packet, we'll put that up on the website, have a web-based interactive version of it. There as well, and so I think we're gonna kind of review the plan and their assigned roles, once we kind of have it adopted, we'll go through staff very specifically and just kind of, we have, meet every other Wednesday. We get together and that'll be a kind of a focus of going through that and really highlighting, so make sure we get it out to everybody in advance, go through each section with them so they understand what their role is. We talked a little bit before we got started, providing employees some basic concept of incident command. There's some great independent study online things that FEMA has that are really handy and probably pretty quick, like 30-minute kind of videos that make you take a quiz afterwards. They send you a little certificate to know you passed it, but it's actually, it is a really, really handy, and especially for lay people who have not been involved at all. These guys look at it, they'd be asleep in 5 minutes because they eat, breathe, and sleep this stuff. But for someone who hasn't been directly involved in it, like some of our department heads probably haven't been, this is it's a free resource, and it's so probably again something we want to do to kind of get that up there. Larry asked about making sure we had kind of make sure folks had seen the hazard analysis of the city. There's specifically a Monona section in the Dane County plan. I think that's kind of our go-to for our hazard mitigation analysis on that. So certainly making sure everybody's got that and has been able to review that from a department and staff time. We are probably due to do a tabletop exercise, so maybe we want to do something maybe here sometime this summer. And then we will be doing specifically on the flooding. It's good timing, Larry, on that one, because we just had to do an update on the ordinance. So of course, they send us a bunch of maps that you can't read. So thanks, guys, thanks a lot. So we're working with them on still making some additional shoreland and wetland amendments to that ordinance. But we're also asking them, we're getting the GIS files, so we can actually overlay that on in reality and see exactly what that is and have some public outreach on that once we
That
get it.
was one of the things that my wife was stinging me on. She says, people in Monona need to know where the floodplain is. It's
Yeah.
not just in the lagoons. Okay,
Mhm.
And I said, okay, I'll bring it up, because it's like 4 or 5 times she told me.
Yeah.
Floodplain.
So we had that, and once we kind of just did the last update. FEMA was a little late in getting us information, and then they expected us to try to turn it around real fast, and we had to explain to council why we were doing things as fast as we were. I'm like, well, the feds didn't really give us what we needed, and now we've got it. Now they tell us we want to kind of turn around and adopt it in 30 days, kind of thing. So we've got it. We've been doing amendments we've got the new maps. We've done amendments to the ordinance. However, we are continuing to evaluate those maps. There's also some shoreline and wetland amendments that we need to make. As I said, we're kind of pulling that out. They were all located in one section of the ordinance. So we've got the floodplain ordinance as a separate one, and we're taking shoreland and wetlands and putting it in another section. So they will cross-reference each other, but we're gonna try to have, because again, the FEMA wants us to, they want us to work on the floodplain stuff. Well, DNR wants us to, but they also, DNR wants us to work on the shorelands and wetland stuff too. So we got, separating them out actually makes it a little cleaner, a little easier to manage. So we're kind of in process and working on that, but we do have some amendments and updates we need to do for those, so. So that was, kind of, that aspect for sure. Wanted to see, those were kind of the main, I think the, kind of look going forward, some of Larry's recommendations that I think we would easily be able to implement over the course of the next several months, once this is hopefully adopted by council, so.
A question. Is Dane County Humane a partner? We have had.
Humane Society?
Yeah, Humane Society, because we have had more and more and more with them.
Yeah.
And we certainly list them as a partner.
We've actually, we actually learned as chiefs that there's some concerns about, so Dane County Humane Society has a contract with public health. And that's who we rely on
Would
to
have to go to.
provide, shelter for dogs that are stray, that we can't find the owner, et cetera.
We have them just floating into all the shelters.
Yeah,
And we've been putting them, I think now Red Cross is coming up with some kind of plan too, because it's such a mess on where to take them, and what to do with them, but that's a problem.
yeah, and at the county level right now, budget season coming up, there's a risk of that contract not being filled. And so that they were at a recent days in public health, the animal control officers were advising us that there's a chance that there might be a lack of funding to even say in any given day, not a natural disaster, where can Monona,
Yeah,
place a dog? So all of us chiefs are sort of keeping an eye on that and sort of scrambling to figure out what we're gonna do.
the other concern is nursing homes. At Sun Prairie, I had 3 nursing homes roll in with all of their people with absolutely no staff.
So a normal day.
Yeah, right, yeah, no kidding.
This reminds me of something else I wanted to bring up here that I didn't write down. We had a train derailment in Wyoming, Wisconsin. Big evacuated area. Got everybody out. It took weeks to bring a guy from Alaska to unload the product from tank cars. What we learned is the 3 Ps: pills, pets, and purses. When you evacuate, tell people, take their pills, take your pets, bring your purses. Law enforcement had such a problem with people trying to sneak in and get their dog. I forgot my pills.
Not leave at all.
Always the pill.
Yes, so that was one of the things that we started working on with the counties. When you do some kind of a sizable evacuation that's gonna last a while, tell people to bring their pills, their pets.
You guys did a really good job here on Owen with that one and getting the pills.
Yeah, I gotta give credit to our medical director. She set up a instant mobile pharmacy in the lobby of Heritage, and people came up and she wrote out fresh prescriptions, and we sent people to go fill the prescriptions and brought it to them, and worked out very, very nice, because a lot of them couldn't grab that. It was too rapid of an evacuation. But we did experience that afterward. With
Yeah.
people trying to sneak back into the building.
Yeah.
Positive that somebody had overlooked their pet and we didn't, but people can be very concerned for their pets, so.
Absolutely. So that's all I had, Chief. If there's any other questions or suggestions.
You guys moving in a good direction.
Yep.
So are we acting on this right now?
I guess I would suggest if everybody kind of likes the edits that I kind of translated from Larry's comments, if we could certainly move those. Maybe add, I think we also add the Humane Society versus and the partnering agency list. And do we want to add something about more difficult evacuation targets someplace in the plan document? Looking at my chiefs. Do we think we need to do something specific on that, or? particular locations we know we would have. Need to be aware of lots of people in one spot. Pool, nursing homes. Apartment buildings. Yeah.
It's under the human services section, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's.
Trying to see if there's some place where we could. Yeah, because everything under the human services have the.
Even the response checklist, kind of the order of the first 12
Yeah.
hours, maybe just add a section in there.
Yeah, you got a simple extra sentence in there, yeah.
So we're making a motion to add these, to
Incorporate
incorporate
these.
these into the plan.
Yep.
And then is the plan now ready to be sent to the?
And then send the council for approval, I think.
So I entertain a motion to approve.
Corporate recommendation to.
Yeah, it's a motion to incorporate
Yep.
recommended changes as presented here in the meeting, I guess, we'll probably do it there.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? And all those in favor?
Aye.
Great,
Thank you,
thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks, Neil.
Moving on to new business. 6A, discussion action on Wisconsin bots grant funding for 2025. Speed OWI seatbelt enforcement.
Thank you, Alder. Well, committee members, most of you have seen these before. The police department is part of a traffic task force. The reason we work as a task force with other suburban agencies is because that's what Bureau of Transportation Safety, Traffic Safety likes us to do. And work as a team and try to work on the same days and generally same time periods to address issues related to seatbelt use or not use, which saves lives, by the way. By the way, you all knew that. Speed and an OWI. So those are the three traffic grants. This year, earlier this week, and Lieutenant Weigel is here. Lieutenant Weigel is the administrator for the task force. For those of you not aware, we're part of the group along with Cottage Grove, DeForest, McFarland, Oregon, Stoughton, and Verona. So all of us make up this group, and your very own Lieutenant Kurt Weigel here in Monona is the administrator of that funding as received by the task force from the state, who receives it from the federal government. Recently, the lieutenant was made aware that the federal government cut funding in half of well, not in half, I should say they cut funding to the state. The state cut funding for two of our grants, our seatbelt grant and our speed grant. They cut that in half than what we received last year and what we were anticipating on receiving this year. So I sent all of you, I know you probably didn't have a chance to look at it, maybe some of you, sort of an amended version of the fiscal notes, which highlight sort of the monies that we're gonna receive and then our obligation of matching. Our match obligation is 25%. What that means is that we have to spend on duty time, city taxpayer funded time, 25% of whatever we're getting. And so the amounts there for the ODBI grant, which was not reduced, it's $5,000 that the city of Monona is gonna be allocated. We have to match that with $1,250 of straight time, in essence, of your officers' hourly wage doing that enforcement.
That one's not 50%, but is that just still the way the calculation worked out?
I'm sorry, no. The OWI task force grant was not impacted by the cuts.
Yeah, I'm looking at speed reduction.
Oh, sorry, so the speed and the speed grants was, you might have gotten the wrong number from me, you probably did. That's $1,250 from 2,500, right, Kurt? Where you at?
Correct.
Okay,
So
so you had
what-
written 3K in
Correct.
the email, so
Correct.
that, okay,
That
so
was
the
an
math
error on
margin
my
is a
part.
50% reduction from a different base.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
Chief, can you give us an idea of like the real world impact of that reduction on what that means for your activities in the lawn?
Yeah, so we typically try to do these for over several months during the grant work. I think Kurt, we had to reduce one of them, we eliminated an entire month, and I at this point do not want to advertise which month that is. But right, Kurt, we eliminated a month of grant work.
Right, and then other months, which would have had 5 or 6 deployments, now have 2.
And now, we could, the council could take some money out of the general fund to restore that, right?
Yeah, I mean, so how the grants operate, so there's an everyday expectation that your officers do traffic enforcement. The grants are very targeted in the sense of the type of enforcement related to speed reduction and crashes that are related to speed, OWI enforcement, and the use of the seatbelts. When officers
Those are things that the citizens of Monona constantly ask for.
constantly ask for, not so much seatbelts, I'll
No,
be
not
honest,
seatbelts, no,
but certainly.
Speed reduction.
We see that on our end and fire sees it on their end when we have to respond to crashes in which seatbelts weren't being worn and injuries result, and that means more time, your public safety. Well, number one, human life is precious, right? So that's goal number one. Number two is that your public safety personnel have to spend way more time on these crashes that could have been relatively minor in nature, but the fact that they weren't wearing seatbelts, now the ambulance has to convey somebody to the hospital, et cetera. So that's less time that your public safety officers and personnel can spend on the streets or waiting to go to another higher priority call, for example. So the council could fund this. They can fund the difference. That is entirely your call. We would try to help maintain our overtime. And our overtime staffing with the cadre that we have now, there is an appetite for officers to sign up to do these grants. And I think there might have been some disappointment when we've had to pull in anticipation that we weren't going to receive the funding, that we pulled some time and then the officers are. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we do have, I guess it's the committee's will, but there's, and I don't know if the committee's aware of this, but there's something that the city's working on right now, which could result in some additional funds to the city that we could potentially draw some of to restore something like this. So, anyway, what are the thoughts of the committee?
What are you talking of in real dollar loss?
It's not like a lot.
Are you talking in terms of revenue?
And what was cut? What was cut from
The total,
Yeah, so what's the math there?
From X to Y.
From so the seatbelt grant is from $5,000 to $2,500.
3750.
Oh, thanks for doing the math, Connie. 3750 is what was lost.
and then the speed. Or that's
She did all the
total.
math for me.
So 30, I mean, so it's not a lot, but it's something that, I mean, in my opinion, is important for speed reduction. So,
Value as far as things.
Rachel, who's?
That was
Yep,
Rachel.
sorry, that was me, but Connie, you can go first.
I was wondering, your take on it, Brian, as far as, would that be well worth
Yeah, so
our value?
I think you're getting a bargain. Anytime that you can put an extra officer on your roads to keep them safe, that's a no-brainer to me. But that's just me.
Well, and there's marginal value to doing 5 instead of 2, like,
There
you know,
is.
you're.
The more you do, the more you're able to raise awareness. Our mere presence out there alone is a deterrent. So there's that. We're not out there, the whole goal isn't to raise, in fact, the goal can't be to raise revenue, right? It's against the law. But to hold people accountable who are violating the law by way of issuing citations, and understand that there's a whole process after us, after the traffic stop that takes place, right? There's a municipal court proceedings as well that determines the outcome. So
Rachel, did you have something?
Somewhat related. I was just wondering, so this isn't a new grant, is that correct? We had this last year.
correct.
So I was just curious if we have,
And
any-
Rachel, I'm sorry, just to be clear, because how it will be presented at council is gonna be different than this. I just tried to sort of just simplify it. There are 3 separate grants.
oh, yes. I was just curious, do we have any data on when officers were, clocked into these grant hours of how many stops they made or, kind of trying to show how successful they were?
We have to report our stop data or our traffic data to the state. So we do have that. I just, Kurt, I doubt you have that readily available right now because you're working from home, but we do have that data.
You do have it?
Not readily available, but it's
Okay, yes.
in my computer.
Gotcha.
You know if it's likely that this funding situation with the feds could change? Is it fluid enough? It seems like everything is going haywire there in Washington. Was it likely that they might change their mind again?
I think originally we were told, and LT, correct me if I'm wrong, but that this was not gonna impact. The things that are happening were not gonna impact this grant funding, but and I'm not sure if it's correlated to that or not. I can't say for sure, and I'm not sure if the lieutenant knows that or was told that, but it's certainly a coincidence.
What was a coincidence?
Based on what you're talking about, the funding
Oh,
and reorganizations and pausing of funding, et
Yeah, yeah.
cetera.
yeah.
I don't
Seems
know if
very
it's a-
fluid.
Yeah, nor do I know if it's directly correlated to this
Oh.
reduction. It could have been something in the works that we might not have been privy to.
I just wondered if we do approve a recommendation to the council to provide more funding. If for some reason the federal funding became available again, we'd go back to the original parameters.
Is this a state allocation decision?
Yeah, so the state got a general pot from the federal government and the state allocates the.
They were reacting to a federal cut.
Correct, yeah, I'm just wondering if there's, do we have contacts with the state? Do you have any sense? They may not be willing to tell you anything because I, as a state employee, am not willing to tell you anything about what I'm working on. But I don't know if there's any way to follow down that. I don't say it.
Kurt has contact with the state and I frankly, Kurt, I don't know if you want to opine. I don't know if they actually know, but.
Yeah. They probably had some level of communication, but you never know with them.
I think some of the issue too is that the fiscal year for the feds ends in July, but the grants go through September. So they might have just been pre-planning for what they think is going to happen next year. Not sure.
Crazy.
But there's nothing saying, of course, that council can't then rescind the funding that's not,
Right,
spent
right.
yet.
Right. We could take care of it that way too.
Where do y'all think it?
Seems to me if it's a one-time deal, if we could make it up, we're all on the same page that it's public safety and it's
Yeah.
not,
You
it's not we're not talking $200,000 or something like that.
No,
That
it's not frivolous and.
if that helps public safety, it kind of, thinking of the morale of the officers might get a little boost. I'm all for that too. That I would be all for that to see if we could approve, obviously, the grants that we have, but then if we could add I don't know how you do that, 2 separate motions, or if you just add an addendum to a motion for the current grant or whatever, but that would be my thing.
Yeah, I think we would recommend, or the committee could recommend to the committee could recommend to the council that it match the loss, the total loss of these 3 grants for an amount not to exceed whatever that amount is. Yeah.
Alder, if I may, this, because of the bureaucracy that is the state, they require these resolutions to approve these specific grants. So I would recommend that we approve the grant or the recommendation if this committee chooses
Oh,
to provide recommendation to council to approve these grants as
is.
and then maybe a separate measure
Separate measure
to
to, okay,
offset the difference.
that makes sense. Yep. Okay, is there a motion to accept the grants?
I'll move to accept the grants.
I'll second.
I'll take you, Angela.
Yep. Hi, Angela.
Any further discussion on that one? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Then is there a second motion to recommend to the council to restore the deficit not to exceed, what was that amount again?
3750.
Not to exceed 3750.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I'll
Thank you.
abstain.
I missed who made the mark and who seconded. Sorry,
Joe.
Joel, thank you. Thank you. Can't trust technology. It might not save the recording even though we had recorded. Okay, thank you.
And that's
Thank you,
it.
Lieutenant. Appreciate it.
All right, that said, that brings us to 7 reports. Fire department.
Well, good evening. I have some good news to relate, and I have some bad news to relate, but I'll start with the good news because it is good news. Not to steal Joe's thunder, but thanks to.
You do every time, it's fine.
But thanks to the work of the PSC, we had interviews for our 2 open positions at the fire department for our full-time spots. We surprisingly, even to me, got 2 very solid candidates, both with experience. One with many years of experience. And thanks to the work from the council on the collective bargaining agreement, we were able to poach one of them away from a local department, which I don't necessarily like to do, but it's nice that
I mean, it happens to us all the time.
he likes what he sees in the department and is very excited to get started. Both of them have accepted their job offers. They'll start in mid-March. So we should actually be back to full staffing, including our provisional person finishing up March 7th, his paramedic class. So by the 1st of April, we should be fully staffed. All very solid people. We do know of one vacancy coming. Original thought was gonna be April, May, but now it looks like more August, September. We still have our provisional list from before, and one of them took medic on their own and will actually be finishing up in August. So they are still interested, so we'll literally slot them right in as our member steps down to LTE, they'll be getting their nursing license, so.
Those original lists are usually good for a year. What exactly was the time?
I think ours is set for 2.
Was it?
But to be safe, because it happened in May of last year, with your guys' approval and council, I'll bring it up in the next month or 2, is to tender her a job offer for the future. That her start date won't be until X date, but to tender her a job offer and her acceptance on it before the end of May. So my house of cards staffing is actually fully built. I've applied super glue, so hopefully it'll stay around a little bit longer. We do have 6 new volunteers coming on board. We've gotten word back from 5 of them. So 6 of them should get this week. So we'll be fully stocked with volunteers again, to the point of being out of space, which is a good problem. The last couple cohorts we brought on board have been fantastic volunteers. They're putting in a ton of hours. I'm getting feedback from my crews that it's kind of a bizarre feeling to have the engine roll up and have 4 people on the engine in the middle of the day. But that leads me to the bad news. For those that aren't aware, Chief Eckloff fell first part of this month outside the station here on I believe the last remaining patch of ice. It actually was melted. The ice was melted by the time we transported him to the hospital. He is out currently another 12 weeks before he can even come back to the department.
Wow.
I will say we are providing support. beyond the snow shoveling, which of course, all the snow came after he broke his arm. Not saying those are related. He was very disappointed he didn't get to use his, John Deere and snowblower this year. But we actually had him at training last night. We had EMS training last night and Margaret dropped him off and stayed for training. And I think everybody enjoyed having him down here. So, but likely a full 6 months before he gets full use of the arm back.
Wow.
But despite that, he's in good spirits and still doing work from home. He still calls me every day. Other than that, it's been a bit of a zoo of a February, unfortunately. It's been very, very busy this month. But we're looking forward to springtime coming. I think that's about it, unless anybody has any questions.
Questions? Just moving on to Police and Fire Commission. Report.
Thunder stolen. No other updates, because I don't think the other chief will have any staffing updates pending either, so we don't have another.
I
meeting.
tried to get him to come to the meeting, but he didn't want to.
Yeah, that is right. So we'll have a business meeting in spring at some point to elect officers, but other than that, no updates.
Anybody else have anything they want to chat about?
I just do briefly.
Yep.
Please. Speeds are getting and have been outrageous, in Monona. When we're stationary or driving and your night officers are catching people going 100 miles an hour on Broadway and they're drunk. I looked at you because I know it's a passion box for all of us, but Alder Bernstein has been very outspoken about the concerns he shares with all of us in terms of the impaired driving and the dangerous driving that's happening, but it is ridiculous. And so if you've seen me be a little bit more sort of keyboard warrior vocal than I have been, it's because something has gotta put us, at least suppress some of the things that we're seeing in terms of the violent or the dangerous driving behavior. We are outrageously lucky that we have not had a significant injury or fatal crash based on some of the driving behavior that we've seen. And that extends beyond the belt line. So your officers, this year, we are conducting these area enforcement, we call them designated enforcement zones or geographical areas that myself and the lieutenant and command staff, based on data, based on citizen complaints and other information that we gather, we designate different parts of the city as, hey, we want you all to focus on all parts of the city, but when you have that little bit of extra time, here's this box that we really want you to focus on. And most of that is in our residential areas, but it also encompasses some of Monona Drive, and that those speeds have been just outrageous as well. And Broadway and Bridge Road, what I'll consider like a cut through street, as well as our responsibility to monitor the belt line. It is your communities, your police department and your fire departments and your DPWs, well, really it's the state's responsibility to regulate the speed and help make that a safe thoroughfare. It's challenging for a small department, but we're up for the challenge. We have no other option. So we try to provide a presence both on the Beltline, Broadway, Monona, but everywhere in between. And so these designated enforcement zones, you will likely start, well, you already have, because the data has shown it. Your officers are checking themselves out in areas that, may only see one car every 10 minutes. But because there are complaints about, the speeder on the street, or somebody's running the stop sign, or people aren't, pedestrians aren't paying attention, et cetera. I want to make sure that we're even more so receptive to some of the concerns, and the officers in their mere presence are providing a deterrence to help keep people safe. So keep that in mind. Some of you, I know you're all safe drivers in this room and virtually, but keep that in mind that we are moving inward and inland. Yes.
When it comes to the Beltline, I understand we have a legal obligation to patrol that. What exactly, how much of our time is spent there, and how are we reimbursed, if at all, for the time we spend there?
Police departments, other than receiving traffic grants, and that has helped us receive funding for traffic grants because we have
So these granting is in part because we're,
the quantity we get
okay,
is factored in,
Okay.
certainly. But we don't get any sort of return from the state. We might at sort of a macro level in terms of like the citation that we issues, but nothing of quantity. But what we do try to do, and me being in my role with the Dane County Chiefs, is just talk about, we can't do this alone. If it's just Monona doing this, we're gonna be we're not gonna get anywhere. Our partners at Madison, the largest law enforcement agency in the county, please step up, please do Beltline enforcement, because if they see you down at John Nolan Drive in the Belt in the city of Madison, the likelihood that they're, gonna continue that behavior when he gets to Monona is, and vice versa. So we'll try to be a good partner, and you please do the effort too. We've invited State Patrol, and State Patrol has had airplane operations
all right, I remember
along
that.
the Beltline as well. I've encouraged the county, hey, you're deputies, this is a county highway too, please come out. There's no selfishness when it comes to traffic enforcement. I invite anybody who has the authority to come into Monona to conduct traffic
Is
enforcement.
Madison doing much in the way of traffic enforcement?
Don't get them started.
I used to be the captain of traffic. I will say that I do believe that there are some efforts. Over the years, Madison has shrunk down its specialized traffic enforcement team. And I think we're seeing some of the results of that. There used to be an afternoon, sort of a rush hour
This is the
traffic
test
team.
right?
Yep, the test team, traffic enforcement safety team. And there used to be an AM. And I think that they're doing what they can, but I think that, and this is my guess, there's a lot of push-pull with some of the other demands in terms of the violent crime.
Yeah,
et cetera.
that wasn't meant as a dig, it's just that their resources are just, they're not all that much different than ours, it's just on a much larger level.
Right, 100%. Yeah, but I will say that they are, when we do ask for help in terms of, helping to stop somebody going 100 miles an hour, they are tremendous in their support and responsiveness, so.
And are we required to do a certain level of patrolling on the Beltline?
So we are required to help mitigate crashes. And in the city of Monona, our #1 location for crashes is Beltline.
Okay, so
So
when an
there's-
accident happens, you have to respond.
We are the investigating agency,
Okay,
which means hopefully there's not injuries, likely there are because of the speeds that are involved.
right,
But now you have potentially both of your cops, 2 per shift, that are gonna be on the Beltline for the next 45 minutes and cannot be.
both
in these
officers
others.
have to respond?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, when I did my ride along on a Friday, it was interesting because the officer said to me, all right, it's 3 o'clock, get ready. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, we're gonna be on the Beltline for the next 2.5 hours. It's
Because of accidents?
because of accidents, yep.
And the reason there are 2 is for safety, right? Visibility, creating distance, cops tragically,
It's for their safety.
yes, there's not like a day that goes by, I don't read something about a cop getting hit from people not moving over or slowing down or driving drunk into them. And you can recall, I'm sure you do, we've had 2 officers last year that were rear-ended while engaged in their duties. One by a tow truck driver in a tow truck vehicle, and the other by a minivan. So, and those officers are both injured. And one fortunately is recovered, but has residual effects of
Wow,
being severely concussed.
wow. And did I recall in one of your emails that the stretch of Beltline in Monona is one of the more dangerous or the most dangerous on the Beltline?
It should be the safest, but it has one of the highest concentrations of crashes. It should be the safest because it's one of the straightest stretches of the Beltline.
I guess that presents an opportunity.
100%.
Unfortunately.
And there's a bottleneck that occurs in our area come PM rush hour.
Oh, so even with that extra lane?
Because of Highway 51, and a lot, and that being a major thoroughfare, there's actually a study that DOT is doing right now to
Oh,
reconfigure all of 51, but particularly that intersection and the intersection of Broadway and 51, to which we also have a piece of. And
so
are
those two
responsible.
intersections aren't very well designed, or not as
No,
well
and
designed.
no.
Too close.
Yeah, they're 100% too close.
Really?
With the volume of traffic that they're seeing, the tens of thousands of,
Yeah, it might not have been too bad for 30 years ago.
right, sure.
But
Yeah.
I was on the
It's not designed.
Beltline yesterday about 11. And it was like rush hour. And I thought back to
Mm.
when Broadway was the southern boundary
What's the Beltline?
and the accidents that we had there. When that Beltline was built, 3 lanes each way, you know, took all of that off of Broadway.
Yeah,
But now it's just so packed. Even, you know, mid-morning, you think it's rush hour. And they're rushing.
yeah, and the flex lane, you know, I have my opinion on that.
Oh, yeah.
Golden car lane?
Yeah, see, you recall, I mentioned it more than once.
the closed lane and
More than
less traffic.
Yeah, I mean, that's just an opportunity for people who weren't obeying the law to begin with, to like now have a free lane to break the
Exactly.
law.
If you wanna get Chief Eckloff fired up,
Oh,
It's-
yeah.
bring
it's
up the flex lane.
Yeah. I think on paper, sure, maybe, but it also left no space for your public safety professionals to
Oh,
do traffic stops. Where are they gonna stop on, you know, on the bridge, for example,
wow.
in traffic? So
Yeah.
it is a very dangerous place for your police department and fire department to work. And actually, Jerry and I came with an agreement that if we're on a call on the Beltline, say we get calls to remove debris from the Beltline, right? If we get calls to do something like that, we'll ask the engine to come out with us. And rather than hit your engine, than hit one of our cops,
Doesn't the county do that though with that patrol vehicle?
when they're out there.
And they're busy.
Beltline Bob.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah, and they monitor,
Yeah,
the
they
deputies monitor our radio frequency
Mhm.
and they try to be proactive when they can, but they have the entire stretch of the
Yeah.
Beltline
Yeah.
that they're responsible for. So it comes with its challenges. We're keeping up, but we gotta do a better job in terms of working collaboratively, because again, we can hammer the Beltline. But it's such a if you're coming to Madison for the first time, or you're driving through, you're gonna be flying, especially if you're coming from the interstate where it's 70 miles an hour.
Right.
You're naturally, innocently probably, gonna be
Right.
going 70 miles an hour,
Right,
right? So think about what you were traveling on the interstate, 80,
right.
potentially, not you, Richard, but 80 plus. You're gonna travel the same speeds likely on the Beltline. It looks the same.
Yeah.
Feels the same, doesn't feel
It
like
just
it.
feels like a nice slingshot coming off the
Yeah.
interstate,
Yeah.
so.
And that's where we're experiencing merging crashes, some re-renders, and everyone needs to get off their phones. That's a big issue with us.
Right.
In some states, it's a law, that hands-free law,
And we don't.
Illinois, for
Yeah.
example, not a law.
It's not.
No.
I assumed it was.
It's against the law for you to drive inattentively, and which means that we had a case in which a Madison bus, a Metro bus, the driver was looking straight ahead, but not attentive. Right? I think many of us have zoned out, right, after a long day or
Yeah, yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So you have to pay attention, and then, so that's against the law, but there's also texting, so you have to be in the act of texting, for that to be against the law. But we have a lot of people who are just simply inattentively just looking at their phones because they got a message, or hey, it's social media
Mounted
time.
on their dash,
Right, yeah,
yeah.
we have a lot of drivers that.
Are you saying you don't watch TikTok when you drive?
I mean, at one point, someone was telling me, oh, this billboard that the city's considering for the Beltline is gonna distract drivers. I'm like, you mean distract them from their phones?
Well, and here's the other thing, do you know how many state billboards there are, like that advertise pay attention, for
Yes.
example?
Exactly.
Kind of ironic.
Yes.
There is some irony behind that.
Yeah.
And that's it. Oh, no, one more personnel issue. Positive, see, good and bad. positive, Officer Bello, your newest officer, who we permanently borrowed from a suburban agency, is doing quite well, and he's solo patrol. He flew through his field training with no problems and has adopted us as his new work family, and we've adopted him, and all is going well. So, and he enjoys traffic. So looking forward to that. And then we are one dispatcher down, unfortunately. We had a resignation from with one of our dispatchers who wanted to be closer to family with up north. So we opened up that process, and thanks in large part, I believe, two things. Number one, you have an amazing police department here. Of course, I'm gonna brag, and a wonderful culture, but you also are paying dispatchers better now. To which point we had 50 candidates, 50, that have applied for
Oh my
one
gosh.
position. So
Wow.
your poor assistant chief is now working through that process to pick a dispatcher position, but we certainly wouldn't have got that a year ago, I'll tell you that. So
Good.
so thank you all. And that's it. It's been a long day. If you can't tell, I'm a little tired. It's been a long day. And then Patrick, you have that matter of business in front of you there.
Yep. Can I entertain a motion to adjourn?
No, I'm sorry, unless you're gonna do the post meeting, the recurring members or the.
Oh, recurring members, but yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
Great. Yes. And motion to adjourn,
So
second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Bisbee.
Hi.
We're adjourned, thank you. And then before everybody goes real quick, just some housekeeping. Up for reappointment are Joe Fontaine, Mark Swart, and Jim Bisbee. Just wanted to make sure that everyone's willing to continue to serve.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right,